First Contact Protocol Failure. The Galactic Council's Department of Species Integration had never experienced a failure of first contact protocols in its 12,000 years of existence. Every species had been carefully monitored, guided, and introduced to the galactic community at precisely the right moment in their development. Until the humans. Obviously, it had to be the humans. Senior Protocol Officer Vaxna was enjoying their fourth morning meditation when the emergency alert shattered their crystalline chamber's tranquility. A cargo ship, specifically the Lucky Star VI, had encountered an unregistered vessel in the Orion Spur. This wouldn't normally warrant waking a senior protocol officer, except for one detail. The unregistered vessel was constructed from materials so primitive that they shouldn't have been capable of reaching deep space. Display encounter logs. Vaxna commanded their neural interface. The holographic display materialized, showing a small vessel with combustion engines, actual combustion engines, tumbling through space. The ship's markings read Shanghai Spirit, Commercial Transport B. Vaxna's secondary hearts nearly stopped. This couldn't be happening. They activated their emergency link to the Council. Code Violet. We have an unmonitored spacefaring species. I repeat, Code Violet. Within minutes, the Council's emergency chamber filled with the galaxy's highest-ranking officials. High Counselor Zix Theta, their bioluminescent patterns displaying clear distress, took the central podium. Report. The species calls themselves humans. Vaxna began, their voice modulator barely containing their anxiety. They appear to have achieved space travel using, and I apologize for causing distress, chemical rockets. The chamber erupted in horrified whispers. Chemical rockets were the equivalent of using stone tools to perform brain surgery. It simply shouldn't work. That's not the concerning part, Vaxna continued. According to our preliminary scans, they originate from Sol 3, a planet we classified as uninhabitable 3 centuries ago due to extreme conditions. Define extreme conditions, demanded Counselor Mu, their tentacles writhing with curiosity. The planet experiences regular geological upheavals, extreme temperature variations, devastating atmospheric events, and, Vaxna's voice dropped to a whisper, they breathe an oxidizing atmosphere. The chamber fell silent. Even the youngest aides knew that oxygen-rich atmospheres were typically found only on worlds too hostile for complex life. Impossible, declared Science Minister Relo. No sentient species could evolve in such conditions. The data must be corrupted. Vaxna activated the main display, showing footage from the cargo ship's encounter. The human vessel's captain was attempting communication, not in the standard galactic frequencies, but through something called radio waves. The translation matrix was struggling, but fragments came through. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Shanghai Spirit requesting assistance. We've experienced a navigation system failure and are off our planned Mars lunar route. Any vessels in range, please respond. They were traveling between worlds in their system, Vaxna explained, using their primitive technology, voluntarily. And according to their transmissions, they have multiple space stations and colonies. High Counselor Zix Theta's bioluminescence shifted to the pale green of deep concern. How did we miss this? How did an entire species achieve space travel without our knowledge? Because, Vaxna said, pulling up the original planetary survey, we classified their world as too hostile for intelligent life to evolve. The survey team reported, and I quote, this world experiences regular ice ages, has active volcanic systems, contains large predatory species, and maintains oxygen levels that would cause spontaneous combustion on most worlds. Mark as uninhabitable and proceed to next survey target. And yet they not only survived but thrived, mused Counselor Mu. What are their current technological capabilities? Vaxna displayed the analysis. They've mastered atomic power, begun quantum computing development, and are experimenting with AI, all while using technology that by our standards shouldn't work. They've achieved this in roughly 300 years since their industrial revolution. 300 years. Science Minister Relo's exoskeleton crackled in shock. That's impossible. Yes, we're hearing that word a lot today, Vaxna said. There's more. They're actively searching for alien life. They'd been broadcasting their presence into space for over a century. They're advertising their presence. High Counselor Zix Theta's patterns shifted to the deep purple of astonishment. Don't they understand the dangers? Based on their entertainment broadcasts, Vaxna said, pulling up a series of human movies, they're quite aware of the potential dangers. They simply decided that making contact was worth the risk. The council chamber erupted in confused discussions. Species integration had protocols for every conceivable first contact scenario, except, apparently, for a species that achieved space travel through sheer determination and what appeared to be a complete disregard for conventional limitations. What do they want? Asked Counselor Gikimu. Vaxna displayed the ongoing translations of human broadcasts. To explore, to learn, to, in their words, boldly go where no one has gone before. They seem to view the deadly conditions of space as a challenge to overcome rather than a barrier. High Counselor Zix Theta raised all four appendages for silence. We need to make a decision. The protocols have failed. This species has already achieved space travel. They're actively exploring. And now they've encountered one of our vessels. We cannot hide our existence any longer. Perhaps, Vaxna suggested, it's time to admit that our protocols, like our planetary classification system, may need updating. These humans have survived conditions we deemed impossible, achieved space travel through methods we considered impractical, and developed faster than any species we've encountered. Are you suggesting we simply abandon millennia of careful species integration protocols? I'm suggesting, Vaxna said, displaying an image of Earth with its swirling clouds, blue oceans, and impossible oxygen atmosphere, that we might have something to learn from a species that looked at the deadly vacuum of space and decided to explore it using controlled explosions. The council chamber fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence, the kind that comes when an entire civilization realizes it might need to reevaluate its fundamental assumptions. Very well, High Counselor Zix Theta declared. Initiate emergency contact protocols and update the species classification system. It seems we need a new category for species that evolve on Deathworlds and consider it normal. As the Council dispersed to prepare for humanity's official introduction to galactic society, Vaxna couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these humans would bring. One thing was certain, the galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. The paradox species. Chief Cynobiologist Lyraxu stared at their research displays until all four of their eyes hurt. The data couldn't be right. Yet after 3 months of studying humans, every new discovery only made things more confusing. Play observation log 47B, they commanded. The holographic display activated, showing footage from a human settlement in something called Alaska. A human female was swimming in water so cold it would paralyze most species. For fun. Computer. Confirm temperature reading. Temperature of water body. 1.7 degrees Celsius. Lyraxu added another note to their ever-growing list of human impossibilities. The door to their lab chimed, and senior researcher Kivpo entered, their normally iridescent scales dulled with exhaustion. Please tell me you've made sense of the endurance data, Lyraxu said. It's worse than we thought, Kivpo replied, transmitting their findings to the main display. They don't just survive in extreme conditions, they actively seek them out. Look at this. The display showed humans climbing the highest mountains on their planet, running distances that would exhaust most species, and deliberately exposing themselves to temperature extremes in something called saunas, followed by ice baths. Their bodies should shut down, Kivpo continued. But instead, they adapt. They get stronger. It defies everything we know about biological limitations. The council wants answers, Lyric Sue said, their tail twitching with anxiety. We're supposed to present our findings tomorrow, and all we have is a list of things that shouldn't be possible. Speaking of impossible things, Kivpo activated another display. Wait until you see their dietary analysis. The screen filled with human food items. Lyric Sue's scales rippled in disbelief. Are they deliberately consuming toxins? They call it spicy food. The compounds trigger pain receptors. They experience pain while eating, and they enjoy it. Some even compete to eat the most painful substances. Competitive pain eating, Lyric Sue muttered, adding it to their list. Of course they do. A priority alert flashed across their displays. The observational team studying human medical practices was requesting immediate consultation. Lyric Sue and Kivpo exchanged worried looks before accepting the transmission. You need to see this, Dr. Mexra, the team's lead researcher, appeared on screen. Their crystalline form was vibrating with excitement or horror, possibly both. We're observing a human medical procedure. The feed showed a human medical facility. A patient was undergoing surgery, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that they were deliberately stopping the patient's heart. They're killing them, Kivpo exclaimed. No, wait, Dr. Mexra said. They do this routinely. They call it bypass surgery. They stop the heart, repair it, and restart it. The patients survive. Often, they're walking within days. Lyric Sue's primary brain nearly shut down from trying to process this. They treat death as a temporary inconvenience. That's not all, Dr. Mexra continued. Their medical practices, they deliberately break bones to make them heal stronger. They transplant organs between bodies. They've even started experimenting with editing their own genetic code. Have they no sense of self-preservation? Kivpo wondered. Oh, they do, Dr. Mexra replied. They're just selective about when to apply it. Look at this. The display showed a human running into a burning building to save a small animal. The human emerged with minor burns, received medical treatment, and according to the notes, expressed willingness to do it again. They calculate risk differently than any species we've studied, Lyric Sue realized. They don't avoid danger, they evaluate whether facing it serves a purpose they deem worthy. The council won't like this, Kivpo said. A species that routinely defies death for altruistic reasons, that treats lethal environments as challenges, that deliberately consumes pain-inducing substances for pleasure. They don't fit any of our behavior models. Lyric Sue was about to respond when another alert demanded their attention. The linguistics team had completed their analysis of human languages and culture. No, Lyric Sue whispered, reading the report. This can't be right. They have over 7,000 languages, and their primary entertainment involves imagining scenarios that haven't happened. Kivpo added, scanning the data. They call it fiction. They spend significant resources creating detailed accounts of things that aren't real, including countless scenarios about meeting alien life. Dr. Mexra noted, they've been imagining us long before they knew we existed. Lyric Sue stared at their impossible data, their impossible observations, and their list of impossible human behaviors. In a few hours, they would have to present this to the council and somehow make them understand that everything they thought they knew about species development might be wrong. Perhaps, they said slowly, we've been asking the wrong questions. We keep trying to understand how humans survive in conditions that should kill them. Maybe we should be asking why Deathworld conditions produced a species that sees challenges as opportunities. You think their environment shaped more than their physical capabilities? Kivpo asked. Look at the pattern. Lyric Sue gestured at their collected data. They survived on a world that constantly tried to kill them, not by becoming harder to kill, but by becoming harder to stop. They don't just adapt to survive. They adapt to thrive. They see obstacles as puzzles to solve, not barriers to avoid. The council won't know what to do with this information, Dr. Mexra warned. The council will have to adapt, Lyric Su said, beginning to organize their presentation, just like the humans would. As they prepared for their report, a new alert caught their attention. A human expedition had just requested permission to study the gas giants in their system, using ships that by galactic standards were barely more than pressurized metal boxes. Lyric Su added it to their presentation under a new heading: Humanity, the species that refuses to accept impossible as an answer. Tomorrow would be interesting. The council would demand explanations, and all Lyric Su could offer was evidence that humans were, by their very nature, inexplicable. But maybe that was the point. Maybe humanity's greatest strength wasn't their physical adaptability, but their stubborn refusal to accept limitations, even the ones that should be fundamental laws of nature. The question wasn't how humans survived on a death world. The question was, what would they do now that they had an entire galaxy to explore? Looking at their data, Lyric Su suspected the answer was whatever they decided was worth doing, regardless of whether anyone else thought it was possible. The war nobody wanted. Supreme Commander Drax Vin of the Krell Dominion had made a terrible mistake. In their defense, it had seemed like a logical decision at the time. The humans occupied valuable territory. Their defenses appeared primitive, and their weapons relied on chemical propulsion and nuclear fission, practically Stone Age technology by galactic standards. The invasion was supposed to last 6 hours. That was 3 months ago. Status report, Drax Vin demanded, their chitinous armor clicking nervously as they paced the command center. We've lost contact with Battle Group 7. Strategic analyst Mex Kroll reported, their sensor stalks drooping. They were ambushed using. Sir, you're not going to believe this. Try me. I stopped being surprised by human tactics. They filled their asteroid mines with something called industrial waste products and turned them into improvised missiles. The humans are literally throwing their garbage at us. Successfully. Drax Vin's mandibles twitched. Of course they were, because that's what humans did. They took perfectly reasonable assumptions about warfare and turned them inside out. The display showed another Krell cruiser falling to what appeared to be a repurposed cargo ship. The humans had stripped its hull, filled it with mining explosives, and somehow convinced their primitive AI to pilot it as a guided missile. How many ships have we lost to their suicide drones? Drax Vin asked. That's just it, sir. Mex Kroll's voice dropped. They're not suicide drones. They're using something called remote operation. Their pilots are safe on their stations while they turn their obsolete ships into weapons. A new alert flashed across the command screens. The humans had breached another secure communications channel. Instead of military transmissions, however, they were broadcasting something else. Are they sending us entertainment programs? Yes, sir. Specifically, thousands of recordings of their historical wars and fictional conflicts. They seem to be studying our reactions to their tactics while simultaneously showing us every way they've learned to fight over their history. Drax Vin's secondary brain pulsed with a migraine. The humans weren't just fighting. They were teaching themselves how to fight better by watching the Krell respond to their strategies. Sir, Communications Officer Vextal interrupted. The Galactic Council is requesting an emergency session. Apparently, the humans have filed a formal complaint. Not about the invasion, but about our inefficient waste management practices during combat. They're critiquing our environmental impact during a war. Yes, sir. They've attached a 70-page document outlining more sustainable methods of interstellar warfare, including suggestions for recycling destroyed ships and minimizing orbital debris. Drax Vin collapsed into their command chair. In 3 months, the humans had not only survived an invasion by a technologically superior force, they were trying to improve their enemy's operational efficiency. Display tactical overview, they ordered. The holographic map showed the current state of the conflict. It was, to put it mildly, not going according to plan. The humans had converted their orbital refineries into weapon factories, turned their mining ships into warships, and were using their commercial vessels' cargo teleporters, which weren't supposed to work on living matter, to board Krell ships by beaming over soldiers in environmental suits. "Sir," Mex Kroll said, "you should see this analysis of their ground combat tactics." The display showed human soldiers using their planet's varying terrain and climate zones as weapons. They were fighting in environments that should have been lethal to both sides, yet the humans moved through Arctic winds and desert heat like they were taking a pleasant stroll. How do they keep adapting so quickly? Drax Vin wondered aloud. According to our cultural analysis, a junior researcher offered, they have vast libraries of what they call science fiction. They'd been imagining and solving scenarios like this for centuries. When we invaded, they already had thousands of theoretical responses prepared. They're just implementing their stories. A new message flashed across the command screen. The humans were offering terms for peace. Drax Vin read them with mounting disbelief. They want to trade. Yes, sir. They're proposing a technological and cultural exchange. They're particularly interested in our quantum drive technology. In return, they're offering. What could they possibly offer us? Innovation consulting. Sir, they've analyzed our military and industrial processes and believe they can help us operate more efficiently. They've attached references from several Galactic Council species who apparently hired human consultants after first contact. Drax Vin stared at the message. The humans had taken an invasion, turned it into a learning experience, and were now trying to establish a business relationship. Sir, Mex Kroll added, there's more. They've invited our military engineers to something called a hackathon to, quote, brainstorm solutions to common space combat logistics problems. They've even offered to cater it. The Supreme Commander of the Krell Dominion, leader of the most feared military force in 3 spiral arms, did something they had never done before. They laughed. Send word to the fleet, they ordered. The war is over. Not because we can't win, but because I want to see what these humans do next when they're not busy weaponizing their garbage. Sir, we're surrendering. No, Drax Vin corrected, already drafting their response to the peace offer. We're adapting. The humans have shown us that we've been thinking about warfare all wrong. Why waste resources fighting when we could learn from each other instead? As the orders went out, Drax Vin added a personal note to their official log. Lesson learned, never invade a species that treats physics like polite suggestions and responds to aggression with improvised recycling programs. They might just convince you to become business partners instead. The Galactic Council would later classify the Krell-Human War as the first conflict in history to end with a technology sharing agreement and the establishment of an annual innovation conference. The humans, naturally, considered this outcome obvious. After all, why waste a perfectly good invasion when you could turn it into a networking opportunity? The learning curve. Dr. Zara Chen, head of Human Galactic Integration at the newly established Earth Embassy, was having what she called an interesting day. In diplomatic speak, interesting meant somewhere between completely chaotic and defying all known laws of probability. Let me get this straight, she said to the holographic projection of Council Representative Nixval, whose crystalline form was flickering with what she'd learned to recognize as extreme confusion. You're telling me that a human engineer solved your station's quantum core problem by hitting it. The official term they used was percussive maintenance, Nixval replied. They described it as giving it a love tap. Our engineers spent 6 months trying to stabilize the core's oscillation patterns. Your engineer took one look at it and struck it with a wrench. It's now operating at 147% efficiency. Zara pinched the bridge of her nose, and they explained their methodology. They said, and I quote, "Sometimes you just gotta show the machine who's boss." They then proceeded to write a 400-page technical paper explaining the quantum harmonics involved in physical impact calibration. Another alert popped up on Zora's display. She read it and had to sit down. Now what? Nixval asked, noting her reaction. Remember that impossible atmospheric terraforming project on Mars? The one your scientists said would take centuries. A team of human graduate students just submitted a proposal to complete it in 15 years using something they're calling aggressive gardening. Aggressive gardening? They want to genetically modify Earth's most resilient plants to survive on Mars, basically jump-starting an entire ecosystem. Their proposal includes using cacti as atmospheric processors and something called super moss for oxygen generation. That's not how terraforming works. Tell that to the moss, Zara replied, scanning the proposal. They've already run successful tests in their university's lab. Speaking of which, we need to talk about human educational institutions. Nixval's crystalline form dimmed slightly. The incident at MIT. 3 of them, actually. In the past week alone, their quantum physics department has accidentally discovered 2 new dimensions and what they think might be a pocket universe in their coffee maker. Their engineering students are still insisting it was just a senior prank gone wrong. The truth was, humanity's integration into galactic society was proceeding both better and worse than anyone had predicted. Better, because humans were solving problems that had stumped the galaxy's finest minds for centuries. Worse, because they were doing it in ways that made absolutely no sense to anyone else. The Council is concerned, Nixval said carefully. Your species has already revolutionized 6 different fields of science, and you've only had access to our technology for 8 months. 7 fields, Zara corrected. The medical students at Johns Hopkins just figured out how to reverse cellular degradation using modified food preservatives. They got the idea from a frozen pizza. That's not possible. You might want to stop using that word around humans. We tend to take it as a challenge. Another alert demanded Zora's attention. This one made her laugh out loud. What is it now? Nixval asked, dreading the answer. A human chef just won your species' most prestigious culinary award by combining your traditional crystal growth techniques with Earth cooking methods. They created what they're calling quantum cuisine. Apparently, it exists in multiple flavor states simultaneously until you taste it. But our molecular gastronomy is based on precise quantum manipulation. It takes years to master the basic principles. They said they got the idea from making Jell-O. Nixval's form flickered rapidly, the crystalline equivalent of a sigh. The Council needs answers, Dr. Chen. How do we integrate a species that keeps solving impossible problems with solutions that shouldn't work? Zara thought about humanity's brief but explosive entry into galactic society. In less than a year, humans had revolutionized everything from quantum physics to cuisine, usually by accident, often while trying to do something else entirely. I think, she said carefully, you're approaching this from the wrong direction. You keep expecting us to learn how things are supposed to work in the galaxy, but that's not how humans operate. We don't adapt to systems. We make systems adapt to us. That's not how progress works. No, that's not how progress has worked so far. But consider this. Your civilization has been stable for 12,000 years. In that time, you've made incredible advances, but always along predictable paths. Humans, on the other hand, went from horse-drawn carriages to space travel in less than 3 centuries. Because you're reckless. Because we're innovative, Zara corrected. We don't see limitations. We see possibilities. When you tell us something's impossible, we don't accept it. We ask why, and then try to prove it possible anyway. A final alert appeared on her screen. She read it and smiled. Case in point, remember that impossible faster-than-light communication problem your scientists have been working on? A team of human teenagers just solved it. They were trying to figure out how to reduce lag in online gaming. They didn't know it was supposed to be impossible, so they just did it. Nixval's form had gone almost completely transparent, a sign of complete cognitive overload. The Council will need time to process this. Take all the time you need, Zora said. Just be prepared for humans to solve 3 more impossible problems while you're thinking about it. probably by accident, possibly while trying to make better coffee. As Nix Val's hologram faded, Zara looked at her schedule for the rest of the day. She had meetings with human scientists who'd accidentally discovered new laws of physics, engineers who'd revolutionized space travel while trying to build better mining equipment, and a chef who wanted to patent a dessert that existed in quantum superposition. Just another interesting day in human galactic relations. Reclassification. The Grand Archives of the Galactic Council, a vast crystalline structure containing the accumulated knowledge of 100,000 species, was experiencing something unprecedented, a complete reorganization. Chief Archivist Tylra floated through the quantum-encoded data streams, their energy form pulsing with a mixture of exhaustion and excitement. After a year of studying humanity, the Council had finally admitted that their entire species classification system needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. "Display latest human achievement log," they commanded. The holographic display materialized, showing a seemingly endless list of what the humans had accomplished in their first year of galactic integration. Each entry defied conventional wisdom in new and increasingly absurd ways. "Incoming transmission from the Council," their assistant announced. High Counselor Zix Theta's form materialized, their bioluminescence pattern showing clear signs of stress. "Please tell me you've made progress on the reclassification protocol." "Define progress." Tylra replied cautiously. "I've had to create 17 new categories just to account for human problem-solving methodologies. They keep invalidating our existing frameworks." "Show me." The display shifted to show the new classification system. The traditional 12 levels of species development remained, but above them sprawled a complex web of new categories with names like innovative chaos theory and accidental revolution dynamics. "Look at this pattern." Tylra highlighted a series of data points. "Every time we tell humans something is impossible, they not only prove it possible but usually discover 3 new scientific principles in the process. It's like they're allergic to limitations." "The Council is concerned," Zix Theta said. "Yesterday, a human child asked why we don't have faster-than-light transportation. When told it was impossible, they asked why 47 times in succession, then drew up preliminary designs for what they called a space folding machine using crayons. Please tell me we didn't let them test it." "We did not. However, 3 of our quantum physicists reviewed the design. They've been locked in their lab for 16 hours muttering about the elegant simplicity of childhood logic." Tylra's energy form flickered with amusement. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. We need to stop thinking of humans as an anomaly and start recognizing them as a catalyst species." "Explain." "Traditional species classification is linear. Species advance through predictable stages of development. But humans? They skip steps. They find shortcuts. They solve problems by accident while trying to do something completely different." The display shifted to show a complex web of interconnected achievements. "Look at this. Last week, a human trying to make better coffee accidentally discovered a new form of quantum entanglement. When our scientists said it was impossible, they wrote out the mathematical proof on a napkin and went back to complaining about their beverage. The Council is struggling to maintain order," Zix Theta admitted. "How do we classify a species that treats the fundamental laws of physics like polite suggestions?" "That's just it," Tylra said, pulling up their new classification framework. "We don't. We need to recognize that humans represent something we've never seen before. A species that evolved not just to survive adversity, but to actively seek it out as a path to growth." They gestured at the display, showing humanity's rapidly expanding influence across multiple fields. They're not just adapting to the galaxy, they're making the galaxy adapt to them. And in the process, they're forcing us to question assumptions we've held for millennia. The Council won't like this. The Council doesn't have to like it. They just have to accept that our understanding of species development was incomplete. Humans aren't breaking the rules. They're showing us that the rules were never as rigid as we thought. A new alert flashed across their displays. Another human impossible achievement had been recorded. This time, A group of human children had figured out how to telepathically communicate with a crystalline species by hosting a tea party. How? Zix Theta demanded. According to their report, they decided the crystals looked lonely and invited them to play. When told that crystalline beings don't drink tea, they suggested the crystals might enjoy the concept of tea instead. Somehow, this led to the discovery of cross-species conceptual resonance. Zix Theta's bioluminescence shifted to a shade of utter bewilderment. They achieved telepathic communion through imaginary beverages. Welcome to my new classification category, humanity, where imagination becomes reality through sheer stubborn optimism. As if to prove their point, another alert appeared. A human warehouse worker had just revolutionized teleportation technology while trying to organize storage containers more efficiently. Add it to the list, Tylora said wearily. Under accidental paradigm shifts while performing mundane tasks, that category's getting quite full. How do we predict their development as a species if they keep developing in unpredictable ways? That's the point, Tylora replied. We don't. We accept that humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy isn't their achievements. It's their reminder that the universe is far more flexible than we imagined. They're not a problem to be classified. They're proof that our need to classify everything is itself limiting our understanding. As if in response, a final alert appeared. A human press school had just made first contact with a species of energy beings that had eluded the Council's best diplomats for centuries. Their method: they offered to share their cookies and asked if the energy beings knew any good stories. Add one more category, Tylora said. Humanity, the species that reminded the galaxy how to wonder. The Council would eventually accept the new classification system, not because they understood it, but because humans had taught them something vital. Sometimes the most profound discoveries come not from understanding everything, but from being willing to admit that you don't. And somewhere on Earth, a human looked up at the stars and asked, why not? A question that would continue to reshape the galaxy in ways no one could classify, predict, or resist.